Hello everyone, we have some really interesting news. You may know Nintendo has been purchasing a lot of studios recently, the most recent being Dynamo Pictures, which is honestly the perfect match for everything Nintendo is looking for. Yes, they are a great animation studio, but they are much more, with a large percentage of their company working on VR, video games, motion capture, and even theme park attractions. You may have seen some people covering this news story, but most that I come across just mention Nintendo purchased an animation studio to help out with games and possibly movies, then moved on. However, I was curious, what has Dynamo Pictures worked on or released? Have they previously worked with Nintendo? What games or IP would Nintendo have them working on? And most curiously, with a large part of their development team dedicated to VR and motion tracking, does this hint at Nintendo releasing even more VR games? Or at least a better version of what we have with the Switch VR and games like Breath of the Wild or Super Mario Odyssey. After looking into Dynamo Pictures, their most recent updates and announcements, along with what we know Nintendo is working on, I think I have a strong idea of what we can expect. Let's begin with the announcement. Nintendo shared the details on Twitter with a link to a short and to-the-point PDF. Our friends at Nintendo Everything have a great article summing it up. Nintendo has just announced their plans to acquire Dynamo Pictures, a Japanese company which focuses on visual content production. The acquisition is expected to close on October 3rd, 2022, and upon closing, Nintendo expects to change its name to Nintendo Picture Company, in an effort to focus on development of visual content utilizing Nintendo IP. Dynamo Pictures mostly focuses on CG content production, although they also work with motion capture recording and VR content development. They've done work for movies, TV, and video game animation, and have worked with Nintendo in the past. Notably, they've helped produce Metroid Other M, and also helped create the animated Pikmin short movies from several years ago. It's not yet known exactly what type of visual content they'll be producing for Nintendo, as it could range from advertisements to full-length movies, in-game cutscenes, or even the production of more short films like those older Pikmin ones. Regardless, as the acquisition is planned to close in October, we'll likely have to wait until then to start seeing any big movement on that front. Nintendo is not typically big on acquisitions, as they tend to buy up other companies rather rarely, and usually focus on smaller companies that they already have ties to, if they do. Just a few months ago, Nintendo acquired SRD Co., another smaller development company that they worked with extensively over many years. It's interesting to see these acquisitions be announced in relative quick succession, possibly indicating a push from Nintendo to consolidate their resources. They go on to say it's pointless to speculate, but I have to disagree here. As Nintendo Everything mentioned, we know in the past they have helped work on the Metroid series and created the numerous Pikmin short films with Miyamoto. If we take a look at their official website, they actually shared an update titled Notice of Shareholder Change, where they directly state, in addition, after the transfer of shares, we plan to change the trade name to Nintendo Pictures Company for the purpose of continuously producing video content for Nintendo IP. Video content is what we were already expecting though, and that seems to be just one part of their company, with several projects going on at once and a large percentage of their company dedicated to VR and motion tracking, and apparently even theme parks. So although not yet announced, I don't think they'll be exclusively working on animations. Late last year in October of 2021, they seem to have partnered with a company named Genda and state, currently, we are planning, producing, and selling various contents centered on video, such as experience-based theater attractions, VR attractions, and interactive games centered on the location entertainment business in MX4D, where you can experience attraction-type movie viewing. We are working on almost all programs for Japanese movies MX4D, released in Japan. As I mentioned earlier, this seems like it would be a perfect fit for Nintendo, especially with the new Super Nintendo World. They have previously had full VR arcade games for Luigi's Mansion and Mario Kart, and a big portion of their Nintendo Land reveal was focused on their new Mario Kart ride, which uses AR. I imagine Nintendo would have them helping on new attractions like this for their parks. There does seem to be a bit of confusion on whether or not Dynamo still has their VR and amusement side, but looking on their website in the employment section, they are still currently hiring for their amusement division, and a previous announcement mentions both being consolidated under a single name. so I doubt they would be hiring people to work on amusement park attractions if they no longer had that division of their team. Beyond amusement parks though, Nintendo has had several consoles that made use of VR and 3D, with Dynamo winning awards for their work in VR and motion tracking, Nintendo doing their best with VR on the Switch, and their own advancements in motion controls. Having them work together could lead to much better VR games on the Switch, or more likely, their next console, if this is the route they choose. I would personally love to see a dedicated unit similar to the PlayStation VR, while still allowing for the cheaper and simpler option of just taping some cardboard onto your face and using the Switch. I think this just leaves movies and games. Nintendo has partnered with Illumination Studios for their Mario movie, but have announced interest in expanding with other IP, which they also reiterate with their quote above. Previously, it was just small, short, animated Pikmin clips, but Dynamo has experience with much more. I don't see a full-length film based on Zelda, Metroid, or other games coming from them. I think they would go with another studio, similar to, if not just doubling down with Illumination Studios. But I do think it is very possible to see more 5, maybe even 10-minute clips of our favorite games as animated shorts. That could expand into even more. My wish would be to have them work on a full series. But which games would you like to see a series based on? Another likely option is for them to simply be creating movies that would be played at Super Nintendo World to accompany the attractions. Finally, yes, they create games. They have worked on a lot of different series all across the gaming industry that you have probably played, and they even have experience on the Metroid series. So, chances are, we may see them helping out on games currently in production, or about to begin production. With award-winning motion tracking and Nintendo confirming Breath of the Wild 2 featured motion tracking, they could even be helping on it, though I think Breath of the Wild 2 is much further along in development, and wouldn't really need that help. I simply mention it because I'm not sure which of the other Nintendo games that heavily uses motion tracking with actors that Nintendo may have in development. What games, amusement park rides, animated shorts, or movies would you like to see them work on? Hello everyone, welcome to the end of the video. We're going to be answering a quick question from Cameron Jonkers. But before we get to the question, a huge thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. If you're a fan of the channel, you can help support us on Patreon, where you can get a lot of great rewards. Have your questions featured on videos or the podcasts, have your topic, theory, news, or anything else discussed as a topic on the podcast. Sometimes join on the podcasts with us, be featured in a video, sometimes even watch videos early, and much more. I really need to say thank you, honestly beyond thank you, to the most generous Patreon supporter that I have, Shadow to Us. Thank you so much for everything. And thank you to everyone else on here as well. Justin Clark, Monica Spath, SOBERX, 𝗵𝗲 Joseph Stewart, NATSU, Wrecker1, Rusty Caulfield, Tremel Shefford, Ashton Wren, Blargnar, Chad Costin, David Guthman, Disappointment, Gus Calvo, Gene Pinna, Candy, Livable Christie, Mr. Monocled Metroid, only donated to hear Jesse speak my name, and ZAIN. Thank you all so much. Sadly, I've still been having some internet issues, but thanks to all of you on Patreon, hopefully everything will be fixed soon. Do you think they might bring back any of the other tribes for Breath of the Wild 2? For me, personally, I want to see them bring back the ancient robots from Skyward Sword. I absolutely love the ancient robots. I also find it hilarious how there's the ancient robots and the ancient cistern, and Skyward Sword's supposed to be the game that's supposed to take place in the ancient past, but even though it's the first game in the timeline, Hyrule still has a history so old. There is advanced technology and places referred to as ancient. I'll go ahead and answer for Daniel. I think he would want the magmais, or whatever those weird raccoon tunnel bomb things are. I really want to see the Kokiri return, which we know was actually supposed to be in Breath of the Wild before they were replaced with the Koroks. Nintendo was nice enough to give us the Rito and the Zora, which we, in a weird way, previously had with Wind Waker, but the Zora was more of a spirit, and the Kokiri in the Wind Waker was a spirit. So we've kind of seen both races together before, but I would just like to see the Kokiri living together and maybe have some sort of explanation on who or which actually did come first and any other differences that may be going on between the races. Other than that, I just want to see the Twilight return. I would love to see more of the Twilight Realm, Midna, though she would probably be dead at this point. but they could have one of her descendants. Who knows? And of course the Ordonians. Bring them back. Basically just put everyone in Breath of the Wild 2. Even horrible Ingle that took over Lon Lon Ranch.